Hello guys, it's Anime Reaper here with another What If Naruto video. What if Naruto had Madara sealed within him PT2, based off the fanfic, Sinister Chakra created by Williams 5505, and without further ado let's get started. Chapter 2, Guardian Angel. Sinister Chakra. Book 1, The Beginning. Chapter 2, Guardian Angel. Orphanage of Konoha, 4 years later. Lunchtime. The children of the orphanage cheered as they ran out of the playroom, quickly heading over to the cafeteria. Lunchtime was one of the most pleasant times of the day, and then they would all go outside and play afterwards, so it made sense that they would be so happy. All of them had smiles on their faces as they filed out, except one child, who remained waiting in the back of the room. Naruto Uzumaki had been born a happy child, but that had somewhat changed after spending several years in this hellhole. Ever since he could remember, the adults would treat him worse than trash, and, even worse than that, they would instruct and raise the other children to do the same. His smiles and laughs would be ignored and scorned, almost as if it pained everyone else to see him happy. He honestly had no idea why everyone treated him so badly. As far as he could remember, he had never done anything to deserve this treatment. Yet he would always end up accidentally getting hurt, pushed, and so on. Earlier this morning an adult accidentally spilled hot coffee on him when he wasn't looking, which caused him to cry in pain while everyone laughed at him. He always tried his hardest never to cry, but sometimes he couldn't help it, the pain and sadness was too much to bear. As if it wasn't enough not to have any parents, the orphanage itself seemed to hate him. But despite all of this, he tried his hardest to smile all the time, and keep a positive attitude. It was all he could do at most times, and it proved to everyone else that it didn't matter what they did to him, he would still try to be happy. Looking left and right carefully, Naruto walked out of the playroom far behind everyone else, but not before strapping on his small bag on his back. He kept all of his belongings, as few as they were, in a bag he had found outside one day, abandoned and forgotten. After several incidents where his toothbrush had accidentally fallen into the toilet, or his little plushy doll fox had been thrown away, he luckily saved it in time. He had chosen to carry everything he had with him so no one else could mess with it. He may only 4 years old, but his mistreatment had made him smart, street smart at least, the hard way. He knew that he would be safer if he would do things on his own, so for the past few months, he had tried to do everything he could solo. Poking his head out the hall, he walked to the lunchroom quietly and picked up his own tray when he entered the room. While the other children had the food served to them, he had learned far too many times that if he expected the lunch lady to serve him, he would be rewarded with an empty tray and a scowl. "Why would I serve you food?" the lunch lady had said to him before. Naruto had no idea. Why would she serve everyone else but him? It didn't matter anyways, getting his own food wasn't that hard. He was going to go pick out his usual lowly meal when he noticed that there was some extra chicken left from the main pot. Smiling to himself, he was about to grab hold of the spoon and put some on his plate when... smack! Naruto pulled his now red hand back. The lunch lady appeared behind him and smacked it hard with her large spoon. "That's not for you, Fox," she hissed, acting as if he had tried to steal something. "Jigomen," Naruto apologized, quickly walking around the lady to the other side of the counter, scooping up some unappetizing mushy and soggy rice that was held to be nutritious. Sighing, he carried his tray over to his own separate low and long table, eating quietly to himself. The food was never really enough to fill him up, but he had tried asking for more once, and was rewarded with a slap to the face. For now, this would have to do. He stood up and walked over to place his dirty tray away, but on the way, someone stuck their foot out and tripped him, causing him to fly forward and land hard on his face, dropping the tray. The room was filled with laughter, and Naruto himself tried to join in, laughing at himself as he tried to put the tray away and leave before he started crying in front of everyone. Later that day, Naruto sat outside in the orphanage yard under a shady tree with his bag beside him, calmly waiting for the day to pass. He had tried to join the game of soccer the other kids were playing, but they laughed at him and told him to go play somewhere else, as usual. This was an often occurrence, so Naruto decided that he would use up his time by teaching himself things that the teachers would not. There were many different age groups at the orphanage, and for the slightly older children, the teachers here began teaching them how to read and write, and for the even older ones, how to become a ninja. Naruto knew that he would never be allowed to play around with the ninja toys, so one day he snuck out a scroll and tried to teach himself how to read. While other children would spend about 30 minutes a day being taught how to read, Naruto would spend hours, because he understood that there was no other way. He honestly understood very little of it, but he knew that eventually he would be able to teach himself, and when he did, maybe the adults would respect him more. For some reason or the other, Naruto had actually been making some progress with learning how to read. His eyes, in his own opinion, they were pretty good, as he always noticed things that other children did not with them. His eyes also caught on to picking up symbols and their sounds as well, after studying them for a while, to his surprise. Sighing again, Naruto pulled out one of the borrowed scrolls and began teaching himself, hoping for the best. It was very boring, but the reward of knowledge would be worth it. The next day, evening, Naruto sat to himself outside, slumping against his favorite tree again with his backpack next to him, eating dinner to himself. This was his favorite spot, far enough away from the orphanage that nobody played around him and he was left alone in peace and quiet, though the spot was still between the large walls surrounding the orphanage. Konoha was truly a beautiful village, as far as he could tell, and the weather outside was delightful. He was sure that the rest of Konoha looked just as pretty, though the only time he had ever been outside of the orphanage walls was when he woke up in the hospital and had to be taken back. But at least then he got to see the village on his walk back, which was amazing. He took out his meal which he brought out with him, and picked up his chopsticks. Looking down at his small plate, he began picking up small pieces of rice, hoping that it would make him less hungry if he prolonged eating. Everything had gone normally for him today. He would be occasionally laughed at, but he would bear through it, study by himself, jog around for exercise, and then go to sleep. Each day was the same for him, boring as it was, but he bore through it hoping that it would eventually become more interesting. When the children of the orphanage reached the age of 8, they were allowed to enter the academy, whatever that was, which Naruto thought was a place where they trained you to be a ninja. Naruto overheard what a ninja was, and how you go around and outside of the village, doing dangerous missions, and he was immediately caught on to the idea that he would become a ninja when he turned 8. However, he knew that the orphanage wouldn't allow him unless he knew how to read and he trained himself, which he promised himself he would do. No matter how boring it was, he would do whatever it took to become a ninja and escape this orphanage and earn the respect of. Hey! Naruto's head snapped up in defense as he prepared for some mud to be thrown at him or to be insulted. He had really hoped that no one figured out where his secret hangout place was. He didn't want any kids to come over and make fun of him. However, to his great surprise, he found a small girl his age with long dark brown hair and a nice dress standing over him, lacking the look of malice that adorned so many faces around in. In fact, she almost looked curious, as if she was looking down at a beaten puppy, wondering if it would snap at her. Not only that, but this was that girl, the one who everybody treated like a princess. Why would she want to talk with him? "Are you going to say something, or stare at me all day?" she asked, peering down at him curiously. "I know you're smart enough to know how to talk, I think." Naruto shrugged and went back to his scroll, hoping not to get in trouble. The last time he tried to talk with this girl, he had been in a world of hurt. According to the supervisors, someone as lowly as he should never talk with someone as precious as her. "Well, you're not very interesting," she pointed out in a matter-of-fact manner, frowning and crossing her arms. At this, Naruto looked up at her with genuine annoyance written all over his face. He'd had enough mockery for one day, and he really didn't need for this spoiled girl to come over to his spot and ruin it any further. But still, he put on one of his fake smiles and looked back up to her, hoping that she would go away. "I'm sorry that I don't know any tricks," he stated, causing her eyebrows to go up. "And you should probably go now, or everyone will think I gave you rabies or something." She frowned at him and turned around, making sure that there was no one around to see her converse with Naruto. "But that's why I came here," she explained, causing him to look up, curious as to what she meant. "Everyone says that you're a monster, and they tell stories at night about the terrible things that you've done. What?" Naruto said, anger welling up inside of him. "Why would they tell you those stories? I've never done anything wrong, except that one time I threw a tomato at the teacher, but that was once." The girl smiled, and sat down in front of him, giggling to herself. "See? I knew that you couldn't have done all that stuff," she exclaimed, clapping her hands lightly. "You're only as old as me." Naruto sighed and leaned back against the tree. Is that why everyone thought he was a monster? Because the adults told them to, and they tell stories about him at night? But why would they do that? Did they know something that he didn't? His attention turned back to the girl sitting in front of him. He thought that she of all people would make fun of him the most. Was she setting up some sort of prank on him? So you're saying that you don't think I'm a monster? Naruto asked her, feigning hope. She nodded happily, causing him to scoff. Ha! As if. You're just a little N, princess, girl who's treated the best. You'll believe everything they tell you. Now, this girl surprisingly frowned, her face growing dark. Oh, so you're saying that just cause I'm treated well that I'm not smart, she stated, standing up in front of him, placing her hands on her hips, giving him a stern look. Well, I guess you're as stupid as everyone says you are. Now Naruto stood up, getting angry. How dare this girl call him stupid like that? Me? I'm smarter than you. And I have to teach myself. I don't have the adults kissing my feet and teaching me everything. You're a who doesn't know anything and can't do anything by herself. This is probably the first time you've ever been insulted. The girl stepped close to him, becoming extremely angry. After all, this was the first time anyone had ever insulted her. No one would dare say anything like that to her. Yeah, well, you're just a stupid baka, she retaliated, saying that to his face. He stepped up closer as fell, his face just in front of hers. You can't assume that. You don't even know me, he shouted, really getting ticked off. Well, you can't assume that I'm a stupid princess. You don't know me either, she said, puffing her chest out, trying to make herself seem taller. Naruto snarled, grinding his teeth together. Well, you assumed first, was the only thing his 4-year-old mind could come up with. The girl snarled as well. No. You assumed first, she responded, furious. No, you did. Naruto said. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. You and everyone else. No. And I'm not like everyone else. Yeah, you are. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. No, I'm not. You don't even know me, the girl shouted at his face, her entire head steaming. By now, their foreheads were literally pushed together, their eyes glaring down at each other with intensity. Finally, getting angry enough, the girl took a step back and pushed Naruto backwards, sending him to the ground. Ha! That's what you get, she said, turning around and dusting her hands off, smiling proudly. That ought to show. The girl's eyes widened when suddenly she was pushed to the ground with Naruto standing over her, now dusting his own hands off. What, you thought I wasn't going to push you back? Naruto mocked at the girl on the ground, smirking. You really are in your own world. Surprisingly, instead of retaliating, the girl lifted up her nice dress, revealing a small knee that was covered in blood. Naruto's eyes widened in shock, looking down at her in horror. He had pushed her too hard, and now she was bleeding. He had actually hurt someone. If the adults got him in trouble for not doing anything, what would they do now that he had hurt someone, especially her? Oh no! Naruto shouted out, diving down next to her to make sure was alright. He fell down all the time, but he never bled. And if he did, it was because it was a big fall, but he would always heal up minutes later. Are you alright? He asked, genuinely concerned. He had never hurt anyone before, what was he supposed to do? Tears began flowing down the girl's face, who was silently sobbing. Naruto looked down at her with wide eyes, almost as if he had just killed someone. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, Naruto thought, freaking out in panic. What had he done? You, sob, ruined, sob, my, sob, dress, sob, and you, sob, hurt my, sob, knee, she cried out, holding her knee in pain. At this point Naruto almost considered running away and hiding for the rest of his life. If anyone found out, he was as good as dead. There, Naruto comforted, trying to hold her in his arms, like he saw an adult do to another child who had gotten hurt before. You're going to be alright. The girl continued to cry into Naruto for a couple of minutes while he held her in his arms. Eventually, the tears ceased and she was able to talk normally again, though she did breath heavily. I am going to have to go to the hospital, she over-exaggerated, looking up at Naruto. I don't want to die. She had never been hurt before, not like this, and she had never seen her own blood either, so she was very worried. Naruto shook his head, immediately rejecting that idea. No, 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 you're going to be fine, he panicked, looking around to where he had ate his lunch. He lightly laid the girl down, and dashed over to where he had left his bag, coming back a few seconds later with it. Here, he said, putting her leg in his lap. I know how to fix this, he somewhat bluffed, examining her knee closely. Or at least this is what I do when this happens to me. He poured out the contents of his bag and he took out a bottle of water that he always refilled and poured half of it out on the girl's wound, who gasped and grabbed Naruto in pain. He turned to look at her, really worried. All right, this is probably going to hurt a little bit, he said, seeing how she was already in a lot of pain. Try your best not to scream. With that warning, Naruto took one of his napkins and pressed it against her small wound, attempting to stop the current, small as it may be, blood from flowing out, and clean it up a little. The girl grabbed onto him again and closed her eyes tight in pain, her face reddening in concentration. After several seconds, Naruto took the napkin off, and she gasped for breath, deeply inhaling. Naruto looked down at the cut, and he was pleased to see that it wasn't bleeding anymore. Turning to all of his stuff that he poured on the ground, he picked up a band-aid, relieved that he still had one. Because the adults wouldn't ever give him any, he had chosen to steal a bunch of them one night for himself. Peeling the band-aid, he placed it on her wound, making her gasp once more. When he was secured it, he sighed deeply and patted her knee, pulling the dress down over it. Why, Yuri going to be alright, he said a little nervously as she sat up across from him. After a minute or two of silence, he sighed again, hoping that she still wasn't mad at him. I'm really sorry, he finally said, looking her deep in her eyes. I didn't mean to push you, well I did, but I didn't think you'd get hurt, he claimed, almost begging for her forgiveness. She sighed too, stifling a giggle at his antics while wiping her face clean of tears. Truthfully, she was embarrassed that she cried so hard in front of him. It's all right, she eventually said, looking down. I pushed you too, so we're even now, okay, she said, looking at him hopefully. Naruto's eyes lit up for a moment, but before he did anything, he asked her. Are you going to tell on me for that? The girl looked at her dirty dress for a moment and thought about it, causing Naruto to sweat a little, extremely nervous. He stared at her with such a fierce intensity that it felt like his shockingly blue eyes would pierce into her soul. No, I won't tell on you, she said, having to look away from his gaze, curious at her own nervousness. With that, Naruto jumped up as high as he could, pumping his fist in the air. Woohoo, he shouted, jumping all around her. I'm not going to get in trouble, he cheered, dancing in celebration, causing the girl to giggle once more at his antics. Eventually, when he calmed down, he sat back down in front of her again, in front of his favorite tree. You took the pain well, he told her, smiling, causing her to smile back at him. Farahim. At this, the girl's face dropped and she scooted in front of him. I'm not a princess, she protested. Naruto appeared to be thinking for a moment, and when he was finished, he looked her up and down and said, yeah you are. With that, the girl jumped up and tackled Naruto, completely forgetting about her pretty dress or her previous injury, quickly pinning him down with her arms. Who's a princess now, she said, triumphantly sitting on top of him. Naruto scoffed, trying to get her off, though she wasn't budging. You still are. No, I'm not. And you're still a baka. No. You're a Hime. Why do you think that's a bad thing, he finally asked, wondering why she got upset that he called her a princess. At this, the girl visibly calmed down and looked down at Naruto with some sadness in her eyes. Because I'm not a princess. If I was, then I would have a family, no king or queen would give up their princess to an orphanage, she admitted quietly. Naruto still scoffed again, causing her to look annoyed at him. What does it matter? So many people want to adopt you. I overheard the adults say that the council or something hasn't yet voted upon what rich family gets to own you. No one will ever want to own me, apparently not even my parents, he replied sadly at the end, revealing his own secrets to her. Everyone says I'm a monster and an idiot, and I have no idea why. The girl frowned at him, realizing that he was having a much harder time at the orphanage than he was, even though she still was sad all the time. Maybe she should become friends with him. After all, they both related to each other in so many ways. People assume I'm stupid and a monster, Naruto continued. But I know I'm not. I'm normal, just like you. And people assume I'm a spoiled princess, she said, but I'm really not. Naruto smiled up at the girl, who was still sitting on top of him. I don't really think you're a spoiled Hime anymore. You took the pain pretty well. The girl smiled down at Naruto, agreeing with him. And I don't really think you're an idiot anymore, the girl claimed. You healed my wounds like a medic nin. Ding ding ding. Children, time to come inside now, a voice rang out from afar in the orphanage, just loud enough for them to hear. The girl got up off of Naruto and dusted herself off, him likewise. They both knew how strict the adults could be about punctuality and being on time, so they had to hurry back to the main building. Naruto walked over to his bag and began putting his stuff in it, with the girl helping out. She bent over herself and picked up a plushy fox, noticing how nice it felt. What's this? She asked curiously, showing him the fox he was holding. Naruto smiled as he finished putting everything else back into his bag, and he stood up, turning to her. Oh him? That's Kitsune, my pet fox friend, Naruto introduced happily. He's my only friend here. We've been together ever since I remember. The orphanage said some old man or something left it for me when I was born. Strange, huh, he finished, taking the beanie fox and putting it into his bag. She didn't respond as his statement really hit her hard. She understood what it felt like to have no parents, everyone in the orphanage did. But to have no friends, she began remembering the way people always made fun of him and did mean things to him, like tripping him or laughing at him. Even the adults treated him really badly. Before now, she had never really thought about what it must feel like to be him, and now that she imagined it. What's your name? She asked quietly, causing him to look at her curiously. He scratched the back of his head, wondering why she would ask him that. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, he said proudly, pointing his thumb at his chest confidently. Or at least that's what they told me. And you better remember that name because I'm going to be a big and important ninja one day. She nodded, trying to will herself to have enough courage to say what she wanted to say next. Naruto Uzumaki, do you want to be friends with me? She asked, looking him deeply in the eyes. The blonde boy's eyes widened in shock, and he almost dropped his bag, looking at her as if she suddenly grew wings out of her back. Really? He asked, doubt showing on his face. Do you really mean that? The girl nodded, her long dark brown hair swaying in the wind. Woohoo! Naruto shouted for the second time that day, jumping up in the air in excitement. Yes. My first real friend, he shouted, cheering loudly and running around the girl who was giggling at his behavior. As the two quickly walked back to the orphanage together, a question popped up in Naruto's mind that had been bugging him for a while now. He started, gaining her attention. What's your name? He asked her, needing to know his first friend's name. The girl smiled at him, which made Naruto feel strange. He couldn't ever remember someone smiling at him who wasn't making fun of him. My name is, she said, looking at him and smiling. Hinata Senju. Weeks later, evening. Naruto's friendship with Hinata Senju had become quite the dilemma at Konoha's orphanage. After all, what adult would support Naruto, the fox child, being friends with Hinata Senju, the last living Senju within Konoha? She was one of the most important people in the village, if not the most. Ever since Tsunade had abandoned the village, she was the only hope for keeping the powerful bloodline limit of the Senju alive. Yet the two seemed inseparable, for reasons nobody could understand. They would eat lunch together, play outside together, and even sit together during story time. Not only that, but the adults couldn't plan to hurt Naruto while he was near the Senju heiress in fear that they might harm her or make her angry. She was treated so well because she might support them when she became the clan head, and she would hate them now if they mistreated Naruto in front of her. Everything was going wrong. The two young friends were currently sitting under their secret tree, far away from the orphanage yet still within its area. Naruto sat against the tree and set his plate of rice mush on the ground while he searched through his bag for his bottle of water. Hinata sat down in front of him and put her plate down as well, placing Kitsune, Naruto's plushy fox, beside her. She didn't know why, but she really liked the doll and she began carrying it around with her wherever she went for the past couple of weeks. While Naruto was looking in his bag, Hinata couldn't help but look at his tray and wonder why he ate such food. Naruto, she asked, causing him to look at her happily after he found his water bottle. Why don't you ever take the good food like everyone else? She asked, voicing her thoughts. Naruto snorted in amusement, causing Hinata to raise her eyebrows in surprise. The adults won't let Make take the food, he said, throwing his arms out in expression. So I just eat this stuff all the time. It's not really as bad as it looks, after a couple of weeks of eating it. Well, unless they make it taste really, really bad or spicy or something on some days. Hinata shook her head in anger, upset that Naruto had to receive this treatment. And after all these weeks, she thought that he had just liked eating that food. Looking down at her own plate, Hinata picked it up and scooted some of her rice on his plate and some of her meat and vegetables as well. She really didn't want to eat all of her good food in front of him while he was forced to eat leftover old soggy rice. Here you go, she said confidently, emptying half of her plate onto his to his great surprise. You can have some of mine. Naruto's eyes widened at the good food that fell on his plate, his salivary glands kicking in. But, Hinata, he stuttered, looking back at her half-empty plate. Won't you be hungry? Hinata shook her head, smiling at Naruto. No, silly. I'm fine with this. Naruto smiled, and after a chorus of Itadakimasu, they both dug in, Naruto much faster than his tiny lady friend. Hinata looked at Naruto in shock as he demolished all of his food in about 30 seconds, whereas she had merely lifted the chopsticks to her face once. From now on, she claimed, thinking the idea out loud, you can always have my food, she said, causing Naruto to stare at her like she was crazy. But you really won't have enough, he complained, caring about her health. We would only have half meals. She nodded, thinking this through. Tomorrow why don't you try taking some of the good food with me, she said, the idea coming to her. They usually don't treat you so bad when you're with me, she exclaimed, thinking it was a great idea. Naruto frowned and looked back in his memory, squinting hard, as if it was painful. The memories of him trying to take the good food was not pleasant, but now that he thought about it, whenever he was around Hinata, the adults wouldn't physically hurt him or do anything extreme. This was an amazing idea. You're right, he exclaimed, jumping up and down in excitement, which always caused Hinata to giggle. You're like my guardian angel or something. Whenever you're around me, I don't get hurt. Hinata smiled, happy that she was able to help her friend. Now that she thought about it, Naruto was one of her only real friends. The adults treated her nice because of her last name, and she was sure the kids did as well. But Naruto liked her on his own accord, and he didn't even know what her last name actually meant. Well, neither did she, but even if they did, she was sure that they would still be friends. Hey Naruto, she asked, after having finishing her own meal a little bit later. Naruto, who was currently climbing the tree they always played and sat by, turned around to look at her. Yeah, he asked, wondering what she wanted to talk about. Hinata sighed, feeling her cheeks heat up for an unknown reason. Why was she afraid to ask this? Did she think that he would say no? Of course he would say yes, she hoped. I was thinking, she started in a very general manner, looking to the side. Are we best friends? Do you want to be best friends with me? She finished, looking up at him hopefully. In his great shock, Naruto slipped and fell out of the tree, landing head first in front of Hinata, who held back a scream. Naruto, are you okay? She asked, dashing to him, picking him up and checking him over. Naruto had honestly been through much worse accidents before. Several times already in his short life he had woke in Konoha's hospital due to the many accidents which happened to him here at the orphanage. To his surprise, even the people there were mean to him. Still, he healed fast, so he never had to stay there long. He hated the hospital, the place scared him to no end. It was easy to say that Naruto had been through much worse before, but when he got up and looked up to Hinata's worried face, he really didn't feel any pain. This person really did care for him, she wanted to protect him, make sure he wasn't treated bad, she spent all her time with him, and now she said that she wanted to be best friends. Naruto couldn't stop his eyes from tearing up as he looked up at Hinata's face, which was illuminated by the evening light magnificently. To him, he couldn't help but think that she looked like an angel, his guardian angel. Why yeah, I would like that. Months later. It had been roughly half a year since Naruto had befriended Hinata, and the two had become the best of friends. They were truly inseparable, and nothing the adults could do would convince Hinata to stray away from Naruto, or vice versa. And, just as they had planned, Naruto was rarely ever getting hurt, due to his own personal guardian, Hinata. The adults wouldn't dare touch him under the watchful gaze of the Senju princess, in fear that one day her anger would bring them down. The two were currently on the roof of the orphanage, listening to the sounds of the other children playing and playing with themselves as well. I am sick of this place, Naruto-kun. Hinata complained to Naruto, not being the first time that he heard her say such a thing. In fact, she complained about it daily nowadays. I can't believe that they still won't let you train with Kunao, or even take a few scrolls. Naruto sighed, lying back and staring up at the sky. So, he replied casually, not really caring. Most kids who join the academy don't know how to use Kunao yet, or at least that's what they are telling us. We don't get to use the Kunao until we join the academy. And why do you want the scrolls anyway? We barely know who to read them. Hinata huffed his comment away, not wanting to agree with him. She clutched her favorite plushy fox close to her chest and sat down beside Naruto, looking into his deep blue eyes. Her hair was still a long dark brown, and her eyes were dark brown as well. Her hair gently blew in the wind, and she scrunched her knees to her chest in between kitsune, daydreaming. I can't wait until we become ninja together, she started, her eyes becoming dreamy. We get to be on the same team, fighting bad guys together and stuff, and we'll be outside of the orphanage. We'll have our own apartments next to each other, because we'll be considered adults, and dash. Naruto frowned as he interrupted Hinata's dream, bringing her back to reality. That sounds fun, he said, looking at her, but we both know that you are going to be adopted by some super rich clan, and I will be stuck in a dirty apartment. Hinata shook her head, refusing to believe such a cruel search fate. No. I'm sure that you'll get adopted too. We might even get adopted by the same clan, she claimed, grabbing onto his arm, trying to convince him. Naruto shook his head, even at a young age understanding that that wasn't possible. They hate me, Hinata-chan, he said, causing her eyes to widen. They wouldn't even want me cleaning the floors you walk on, and they definitely won't let me near you. Hinata sighed, lying down next to her friend, staring at the sky with him. Well, we can wish for that, can't we? Naruto shrugged, trying his best not to care. The thought of him being separated from his only precious person in the world made him rather want to perform heart surgery on himself. He wasn't stupid at all, he knew that the world hated him for some reason and that they loved Hinata for another. The two didn't mix, angels and demons can't be together as friends after all. All we can do is enjoy the time we have now, because you could be adopted any day now, Naruto commented sadly, holding on to Hinata's hand. Hinata closed her eyes tight, trying not to cry at the thought herself, and grabbed back onto Naruto's hand with all her might. Don't even say that, she said in a choked voice, grabbing onto his arm as if he could vanish at any second. He was just as precious to her as she was to him. Naruto only smiled at her in response, turning to look her in the eyes. He laughed a little, causing her to giggle a little as well. He did have that effect on her after all. Come on, Hinata-hime, don't be such a baby, he said, trying to act more like a man in front of her. Besides, I wouldn't even let them come and take you away. They would have to get through me first. Hinata smiled silently and snuggled herself into her best friend, appreciating his words and his warmth. If only they could be together forever, it didn't matter where they were, as long as the two of them had each other, she could be happy. Later that night, the Hokage sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose as all of the council members filed into the room, sitting in their proper places. The clan heads held their respective heads high, waiting anxiously for this meeting to start. It was quite the important meeting, that the aged Kage would admit, but one he was not looking forward to. Even though this was the third time that they'd had the same meeting for the same reasons, the decision was still undecided. I see everyone is accounted for, Hiruzen started, glancing around at the faces in the room. Very well. We will begin what we have come here for. We will decide which clan shall adopt Miss Hinata Senju until it is time for her to form her own clan. Instantly, the room erupted in argument, nearly every clan head shouting about why they should be the ones to adopt the Senju child. Sarutobi honestly couldn't tell the difference between his own council sometimes with an academy class. Silence, he roared, effectively shutting everybody up. We will go about this like the respected ninja or leaders that we are. Now, I will first declare that Miss Hinata is a Senju, and as a village, it is our desire to raise her as a ninja in an attempt to create the mighty Senju clan once more, reviving the great will of fire which brought this village from the ground. That being said, I will only allow a prestigious ninja clan to adopt Miss Hinata. There is no debate upon this statement. There was some grumbling from the clan heads who were not ninja, but the majority of the members nodded their heads in agreement. I will begin this decision by first hearing out what each clan member has to say about the matter. Tsum Inyazuka, I will begin with you. Tsum, head of the Inyazuka clan, stood up loudly and slammed her hands on the table. Hinata Senju should go to our clan, she began, staring at the Hokage. The Inyazuka know how to raise others as if they were our own. We would treat her well, and she would bond with the family, and then dash. She would support your clan and give you money when she is older. Shikaku of the Nara clan interrupted her, earning himself a strong glare. All you want, or more likely, all the majority of this council wants is to use Hinata for her resources to benefit themselves, not the village. This is more of a fight as to who gets the power of the Senju and their inheritance. It's like a bunch of kids fighting over who gets the last candy bar, he finished, sighing, and leaning back in his chair lazily. The Hokage cleared his throat loudly, and though he completely agreed with his advisor, he had to reprimand him for interrupting. Please keep your thoughts to yourself while others are speaking, he sternly said, feigning anger. Shikaku shrugged coolly and placed his hands behind his head, closing his eyes in thought. Inyazuka, I have heard your main argument and I will continue on with the council, the Hokage said, earning his own furious glare. Choza, Sarutobi directed to the head of the Akimichi clan, what say you of this? Choza stood up with a pained look on his face, almost a look of distaste. As of now, he started, I do not believe that a Senju should go to any large clan. All that would accomplish is making their own heads swell up with selfish motives, and while it is true that they would raise her to be their own, like Inyazuka mentioned, they would only try to completely make them of their own clan, fusing the bloodline of the Senju with theirs. Hinata Senju should either be privately trained until she can form her own clan, or given to a less prestigious clan that wouldn't let it got to their heads, like the Nara clan. The Hokage nodded thoughtfully as Choza sat down, and moved on to the next member. While he knew that almost every clan member would vote for themselves, this was mostly to convince the non-ninja members of the council who to vote for. Shivi, would you care to share your thoughts? Hiruzen asked next, turning everyone's attention to the silent Abarame clan head. The bug user didn't even stand up as he shook his head in disapproval, his face unreadable due to his dark shades. He began, his voice low and dangerous, would agree with Choza's statement, though it is illogical to voice my full thoughts. This meeting is not about common sense, it is merely to fill the already overflowing cups of the non-ninja council members' minds with false knowledge. We all know that Hinata will either be given to the Uchiha or the Hyuga, the largest clans who have the largest support among the members. It would be logical to skip this nonsense and let the two clans debate themselves. This statement caused a large amount of murmuring to occur, causing Hiruzen to sigh once more. If only it was his decision to decide Hinata's future. Very well. Hayashi, tell us why your clan should adopt Hinata, so that we can decide this matter and stop quarreling over it, the Hokage commanded, skipping over several members to get to the Hyuga clan head. Hayashi stood up elegantly, his long robes swaying lightly. His paled eyes roamed across the entire council, trying to meet each and every member. I would agree with Shivi, to some degree, Hayashi started, his face showing no emotion. The only debate here is whether or not Hinata will go to my clan, or to the Uchiha, he hissed out the last word with venom in his voice. On that matter, it is painfully obvious that a Senju, an enemy of the Uchiha, should not fall near the greedy hands of the Uchiha. Since the founding of Konoha, the Uchiha and the Senju have been bitter rivals, giving up a Senju to their clan would be foolish. The Hyuga, however, befriended the Senju immediately when they allowed us to enter their village long before my birth. And to my knowledge, the clan heads before me continued to remain on social terms with the Senju up until their departure from the village. I plan to continue this ancient bond, and strengthen the Senju under the guidance of excellent ninja. We would train her to become the powerful heiress that she needs to be in order to establish the Senju clan once more. Under the all-seeing eyes of the Hyuga, we would rekindle the will of fire that has been scattered years ago. When Hayashi sat back down with a smug look on his face, the majority of the council nodded their heads with approval and some non-ninja council members clapped lightly for the speech. The Hokage nodded himself, almost agreeing with the sly Hayashi. Unless the Uchiha clan had another great reason for them to adopt Hinata, the Hyuga had this argument in the bag. Fugaku. Hiruzen motioned with his hand, waiting for the man to stand up and talk. After a long moment of silence, Fugaku, the honored head of the Uchiha clan, stood up and stared directly at the Hokage. I agree with Hayashi. The possession of Hinata Senju should go to the Hyuga clan, he said with a straight and serious face. The majority of the council gasped at Fugaku's sudden surrender after days of arguing strategically. Even Hayashi and Shivi paled at the statement, shocked at how easily the Uchiha had given up. Are you sure you wish to give Hinata to the Hyuga clan? The Hokage asked, his mind flying trying to figure out why Fugaku was doing this. The Uchiha nodded his head, curiously looking satisfied at this decision. Yes, I am quite sure. Sarutobi shook his head confused, but nonetheless stated to the council. Very well, does the council agree with this decision? The majority of the members nodded their heads, showing the Hokage that they were in agreement. Then as of now, Hiruzen said, his voice strong, Hinata Senju will be formally adopted by the Hyuga clan until it is time for her to form her own clan. All that was left now was the paperwork. The next morning, Naruto yawned as he sleepily made his way to the cafeteria, his unruly hair remaining unkempt from last night's sleep. Students filed into the large room next to him, not even sending him a dirty look. After all the time he had spent with Hinata, they knew that they shouldn't make fun of him, lest they be chewed out by the Senju herself. He grabbed a tray and sat down in the far back of the gloomy room, taking a seat at his own table. He didn't want to go and kept food until. Just as he was thinking it, a tired-looking Hinata Senju walked into the cafeteria with several other females her age, clutching onto Kitsune, her favorite foxy plushy doll. Upon spotting him out, her eyes brightened and she quickened her pace over to his table, immediately losing her previous companions. Good morning, Naruto-kun, she greeted to him, sitting next to him, setting Kitsune down next to her. Did you eat already? She asked him, noticing his empty tray. Naruto grinned at her and shrugged, looking away when he explained why. No, I decided to wait for you to come first, he honestly explained. Hinata smiled at him and her cheeks heated up a little bit. Naruto really was her best friend, and he always did think about her. The two went to pick out their foods together, and they came back to sit down and eat. When they finished, they put their trays away and thought about what they were going to do next. So, what do you want to do next, Hinata-chan? He playfully asked her, now that they were done with their meals. Today was Saturday, and the orphanage pretty much let the kids do what they wanted that day, obviously except leave the compound. They weren't allowed to do that until they were 8 years old, which was quite some time for these youngsters. I don't know, she shrugged, thinking hard about how they could spend the day together. How about we climb up to the roof and think about it then, she voted excitedly, loving adventure almost as much as her blonde friend. She didn't even have to ask, as Naruto was already holding her hand and dragging her outside before she could complete her sentence. The two rushed outside, and when no one was looking, they climbed up a low nearby tree which grew next to the main building. Naruto had found out a while ago that its thick, low, and numerous branches allowed them to be able to climb up it, and eventually, Naruto had the idea that they could jump from the tree to the roof, since its branches dangled over the building. It had taken time to convince Hinata to do it, but after promising her safety and that he would catch her if she fell, she finally was able to do it. Now, every time they could, they traveled up to the roof, seeing as it was probably the most adventurous thing they could do together. Once they were on the roof, they walked to their favorite side, which gave them a view outside of the walls surrounding the compound, showing them part of the village outside. This view never gets old, Naruto commented, taking a seat next to Hinata. The Senju nodded, completely agreeing with him. Yeah. I can't wait for the day when we get to go outside of here together, she said, her eyes glazed over dreamily. We'll go to the academy, and play at the nearby parks, and explore the village together and find hidden places, and... Naruto longed to do all those things with Hinata as well, and it pained him to know that the only thing that prevented them from that was 4 more years in a large brick wall. But what if Hinata was adopted before then? They would never get to experience that together. He really wanted to do all that he could with her while they had the time. Suddenly, his eyes widened when an extraordinary idea came to him. He nudged Hinata softly in the side, who was still talking, causing her to wake up from her dreaming and look at him curiously. Ano? She asked, wondering what he was wide-eyed about. Naruto merely pointed to the side, his eyes not leaving the spot. Hinata's eyes followed his finger lead, and she was let down when all she saw was a tree, similar to the one they had climbed up with. What is it, Naruto-kun? She asked, now really curious as to what he was doing. It's just a tree. Naruto shook his head, understanding that she wasn't getting what he was really getting at. But look where it leads to. Hinata looked back at the tree, and her eyes followed along the thick branches, which led over the large brick barrier. She could barely see that there was a house that was just visible beyond the wall. There's no way that he could possibly be thinking. "It's our way out," he shouted to her, trying to hide all of the excitement that was flowing through his adventurous body. "We could walk across the tree branch, and jump onto the roof on the other side of the wall." Hinata's eyes widened as well, now following his thought process. "But Naruto, it's against the rules," she whispered, keeping her voice down almost as if someone would hear them. Everyone in the orphanage knew that it very much against the rules for children under the age of 8 to leave the orphanage walls. There was a gate at the front, and there was always an adult keeping guard, making sure that no children ran out. "We won't get caught," Naruto argued, keeping his voice down secretly low as well, leaning close to Hinata. "We can explore the village together and be back before anybody knows we're gone." Hinata looked back and forth between the outside village and the tree branch, pushing her fingers together in a recently developed nervous habit. I don't know, Naruto-kun," she said nervously, not knowing what she could do. "We could really get in big trouble." A part of her wanted to go out on the adventure with her best friend, while another part of her didn't want to risk getting in trouble. To be honest, she wasn't worried about herself nearly as much as she was worried about Naruto. She knew that they wouldn't do anything more than scold her for leaving the compound, but if they found out that Naruto had left, she didn't even want to imagine what they would do to him. Naruto smiled at her and grabbed her hands, looking her deep in the eyes. "Trust me, Hina-chan," he said up close to her, causing her little cheeks to heat up to a nice light pink color. "You won't get in trouble. It's Saturday, and they don't check on us until dinner time." Hinata turned her face to the side, looking away from his piercing blue gaze. "I know I won't get in trouble," she explained to him. "I'm worried about you getting in trouble." Naruto was taken aback at the large amount of caring he felt from her words and her voice, which almost caused him to forget about his previous plans. It didn't matter how much time he spent with Hinata, he was always touched deeply when she expressed her care for him. "Don't worry about me," he told her, after smiling even larger at her again. "I'll be just fine as long as we're together, believe it. You're my guardian angel, after all." Hinata sighed, really not knowing what she should do. Should she risk Naruto's safety just so that they could have fun together? Naruto saw the confliction in her eyes and used one last motive to convince her. "Remember, Hinata, we don't know how much time we have left together, so we need to enjoy whatever we already have." At this, Hinata nodded courageously and stood up next to Naruto, ready to go with him. "Are you with me, Hinata-chan?" Naruto asked excitingly, standing up as well. "Hi," she responded, almost saluting to him. Naruto jumped up into the air and cheered silently, a common habit of his which always caused Hinata to giggle. "Then let's do it." The two friends nervously teetered across the thick branch together, reaching the end, over the gate. Luckily, they were covered from view by the many leaves which blossomed from the tree. They were both shocked as well when they noticed that the roof of the house below them wasn't more than a 3-foot drop. Naruto was the first to drop down to the roof, and when he did, Hinata came after, landing boldly next to him. Both of them were breathing heavily, extremely excited from what they were actually doing. "We're out of there," Naruto commented quietly, looking back at the orphanage, able to see the top of the roof from their point. "Woohoo!" he cheered, grabbing Hinata's hand and leading her to the edge of the roof. To their luck again, the drop to the ground wasn't long, because there was a dumpster a couple of feet from the roof. They jumped down to it with her, and from there, they jumped to the ground. Standing up, they both looked wide-eyed at the alley in front of them which lead to the open village. In front of them lied an entire village filled with secrets, tunnels, open fields, trees, shops, other people, and much, much more. They had no time to lose. "Let's go. Aim. Yahiko, kill me." 15-year-old Yahiko panted heavily through the greatly falling rain as he looked up to his best friend, Nagato, who was looking at him seriously. Yahiko looked back and forth between his red-haired friend and their other friend who was currently being held captive by their enemy, his hands which were clutching a kunai shaking madly. "Don't do it." Yahiko's head snapped back forward to Konan, who was currently on top of the hill in front of them, on her knees, being held forcefully by Hanzo, the leader of AIM who had betrayed them. "Don't worry about me. You two get out of here." Yahiko was torn with indecision as the search fate of his two friends suddenly was placed on his shoulders. Hanzo, thinking that he and his gang were a threat, tricked them at a rendezvous, and with the help of Danzo's route, he and his gang were currently surrounded, with little chance for escape. The only way to protect the lives of his followers, Yahiko had to kill Nagato, the leader of the gang, and also his best friend. Yahiko! Nagato shouted out at him, causing him to jolt out of his mind. Do it! No! Don't do it! Konan retaliated from on top of the hill, captive. You'd better hurry up, unless you want the girl to die. Hanzo threatened from his position of power, looking down evilly at him. Yahiko panted heavily, unable to choose whose life he would have to sacrifice. The choice was impossible. How could he do it? Suddenly, Nagato dashed forward at him, a look of intensity in his eyes. With Yahiko's special eyes, he could tell what Nagato was planning to do. But his friend was too fast. Appearing in front of him, Nagato grabbed his arm and thrust it forward into his own gut, forcing Yahiko to kill him. Yahiko's eyes widened as he felt his hand, which was holding the kunai, slam into his best friend in a vital spot which would surely kill him. His breathing stopped as he felt his friend's weak breathing on his neck, tears swelling up in his eyes. You and Konan, Nagato told him quietly and calmly, you've gotta stay alive somehow. You are the Messiah. I know you are. With your eyes, you can really change this world. You can, really. With that, Nagato's body went limp and he fell lifelessly to the ground, blood dripping from his mouth. Nagato! Konan shrieked out in tears from the hill, her eyes showing her what she was praying not to see. Yahiko allowed tears to spill from his spiral eyes, the same ones that had given him and his friends the hope to rid this world from the war which inhabited it. Nagato was the one who deserved these eyes, not him. Why? Why did this have to happen? He only wanted to protect his friends. If the war is going to continue, then I will become the god of this world. The words of his friend echoed in his mind as tears continued to fall from his eyes which were now reflecting pure anger. Suddenly, hundreds of kunai began to rain down from the hill to them, Hanzo ordering his men as well as Root to execute the entire gang. I will become god. Right before they could reach him, Yahiko held up his hand, causing a massive and powerful force wave to erupt from it, easily repelling all of the kunai in multiple directions. He repelled them. Hanzo thought out loud in wonder, never before seeing something like that done in that way. How? Hanzo wasn't able to say any more as Nagato suddenly appeared in front of him, kneeling down to snatch Konan while Hanzo jumped backwards. But before he could do anything else, exploding tags began coming from the ground beneath him, quickly wrapping around their bodies as they began igniting. Boom! A colossal explosion filled the air as the entire area was filled with fire, destroying everything within its radius, including a lot of Yahiko's gang and even some of his own men who were unable to escape the blast. Hanzo's eyes squinted from behind as he tried to find out whether or not the blast had killed them. Did I get them? He wondered, waiting patiently for the smoke to clear. When the cloud of ash finally did disappear, it revealed a generally safe Yahiko and Konan, who were somehow standing behind from the spot. Yahiko! Konan shouted up to her friend who had saved her, noticing that he was injured. Stay here and protect Nagato's body, Yahiko commanded to the whimpering Konan, who nodded weakly. With that, he walked forward slowly to Hanzo, his eyes glaring with intense hatred, enough so to startle the powerful leader of the village hidden in rain. Not bad, kid. Hanzo complimented, seeing as how his opponent was still alive. I'm surprised you managed to escape my exploding attack. Those eyes of yours, the Rinnegan, they truly live up to what the legends tell of them. Looking back at all of the Root members and his own forces, he threw his hand down, pointing at Yahiko, Konan, and their remaining gang members. Kill them all. Konoha, evening. Naruto held Hinata's hand as they made their way back to the alley which they had left before, Naruto luckily remembering where it was. They had spent the entire day going about Konoha, exploring the vast village together, doing as much as a 4.5-year duo could do. They walked all around, their imagination allowing them to feel the joy of adventure. One of Naruto's highlights of the day was going to the what's the word? Ramen bar. The two 4-year-olds were hungry and Naruto had followed his nose which led them to a ramen bar. Whoever was the owner of the bar had sympathy on the two, and had given them 2 free bowls. Hinata's favorite part of the day is when they had climbed up to the highest part of the village together. It was like a mountain with faces carved into it. Naruto had found some stairs at the bottom of it, and they had dedicated half an hour to climb it, but it was worth it when they actually go to see the whole village together. The entire village under their eyes. Naruto and Hinata were both at a loss for words when they saw the amazing and beautiful view before them. They could see the orphanage, a large building in the center of the village, and the open fields and forest which surrounded the great walls of everything. After that, they had walked around some more, just enjoying the openness of it all. But when the sun began to fade from the sky, they both made their way back to the orphanage together, never letting go of each other's hands so that they wouldn't get lost in the crowds. "There's the dumpster," Naruto pointed out, his finger showing Hinata to the dumpster which they had used to come down. At the end of the alley was the wall blocking the orphanage, so they knew that they were in the right place. Helping each other out, they climbed up the dumpster, Naruto first pulling himself over and then helping Hinata, who was still holding on to her fox doll. From there, Naruto jumped up against the wall, his hands reaching the top, allowing him to pull himself over after exerting himself. He then leaned over the wall and held out his hand to Hinata, who grabbed it and pulled herself over with his help. Once they were on top of the roof, they were able to use their same strategy to climb onto the branch, using the wall for boost. From there they walked across the branch, over the wall and then onto the roof of the academy, just in time to hear "Dinner. Everybody back for dinner." Both Naruto and Hinata breathed heavily when they realized they made it back safely in time, without getting caught. They looked up at each other after they were able to breathe normally, only to start laughing in excitement about what they had just done. That night, all they could think about was the joy they had experienced together, which would forever be in their memories. Together. The next morning, Naruto woke up smiling after he dreamed of all the adventures he and Hinata would do together each weekend. He literally jumped out of his bed, hastily throwing it together, and jogged at a light pace to the cafeteria, excited to meet Hinata at breakfast and talk to her about their day. Sunday, after all, was just as relaxed as Saturday, so it was possible that they could escape again. His merry skipping came to a halt when he heard voices in the hallway he was in, causing him to slow to a walk to investigate. Several girls his age were huddled together, talking about something of importance. "So did you hear?" one of them whispered, just loud enough for Naruto to overhear. "Yeah, I can't believe she's finally adopted." At this, Naruto's blood ran cold and he did all he could to restrain himself from doing something stupid. He needed to hear more than that before he made any conclusions, like what he was thinking right now. "I know, right? I guess that means that he'll be all alone again." At this, Naruto's heart stopped and he ran away down the hallway, as fast as his small legs could take him. There was no way, there was just no way. He literally ran into the cafeteria, causing everyone to stop what they were doing and stare at him, but he couldn't care less. His eyes darted around at all the shocked or mad faces, looking for that one face of compassion that he had come to love in his life, a face that he needed to see. But she wasn't there. Turning around, he full out sprinted through the hallways of the orphanage again, ignoring the yelling that the adults were shouting at him. He dashed all the way down to the excluded girls' dormitories, even though it was forbidden for him to do so. Ignoring the random screams of girls, he made his way to where he knew Hinata's room was, and looked in. Only to find an empty bed with folded covers. Even worse, he saw Kitsune, Hinata's favorite toy, placed on top of the pillow, which sent even more alarms in Naruto's frantic mind. Hinata would never go anywhere without her plushy fox doll, this could only mean. Wasting no more time, Naruto grabbed the fox doll, made a mad dash to the very front doors of the orphanage, doing everything he could to stop the tears that were now streaming down his face. By the time he made it to the front, and he saw several adult faces whom he had never seen before, who were wearing long white silk robes. They were all crowded around the hallway, talking with the head of the orphanage, whom Naruto had seen on several occasions. Being careful, he crept against the wall, being cautious not to get caught, but eavesdrop on the conversation. "Do you have the papers?" Naruto heard, still hoping for the best. Indeed. After some ruffling of papers, Naruto strained his ears to hear more, pleading to know who was being adopted. After several moments of silence, Naruto heard some footsteps, followed by, "Are you ready? Hi." At this last word, Naruto's blood froze, as he instantly recognized the familiarity. Forgetting all previous sneakiness, he jumped out into the hallway to see who in fact was getting adopted. His body froze once again when he saw the one person who he did not ever want to associate the word adopted with. For that split second, his eyes became in immediate contact with Hinata Senjo, who was holding hands with a man in white robes, looking back over her shoulder with fear and tears in her eyes. Hinata! No, he shouted out, tears falling from his own eyes, realizing that his worst nightmares were coming true. All of the adults turned to look at the commotion, and their faces turned to looks of disgust as they saw who it was. What is he doing here? Hayashi spat out, who was holding Hinata's hand, looking angrily at Naruto. The orphanage head looked angrily at Naruto and nervously at Hayashi, hoping not to ruin the deal. Well, the Hokage forced us to take him, but we were planning on dash. I don't care, Hayashi coldly interrupted the man, waving his hand. Get that monstrosity out of my sight. Today is a monumental day for my clan and I don't want it to be ruined by this abomination. Hayashi began walking out the door with Hinata, who did her best to turn around to look at Naruto, pleading at him with her eyes. The orphanage leader walked up to Naruto and grabbed him by the arm forcefully, leading him away. You have been a thorn in my side long enough, you fox, he whispered violently to Naruto. Well, that ends today. I am personally going to make sure that your stay here is going to be hell, until I can legally kick you out of here, which I will make sure I literally do. Naruto wasn't even listening, all he could see was the retreating image of a crying Hinata. Thinking quickly, Naruto bit the arm of the adult holding him, not caring about the consequences. The man screamed and let go of Naruto, allowing the boy to quickly run to the retreating group of people, pushing through until he could reach Hinata. For a split second, Hinata's eyes went wide, and Naruto pressed up against her, giving her a breathless hug. I won't forget you, he whispered to her, handing off his fox doll to her, placing it secretly in her hands as he heard the screaming of the adults. Hinata breathlessly cried more as tears poured out from her eyes and onto Naruto's shoulder. I won't forget you either, Naruto-kun. With that, Naruto was forcefully removed from Hinata, with two adults pulling him away from her. The last he saw of Hinata was her small smile and her teary eyes, and it was all he could do to smile back. I won't forget you. Later that day, Naruto was literally thrown into his room by the head of the orphanage, rolling until he hit a wall forcefully. Pack what little you have, scum, the man shouted at him, infuriated. Because you are leaving, today. I don't care what the Hokage told me anymore. You will never set foot in this orphanage again. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Naruto sighed sadly as the door was slammed behind him, wiping his tears away. He picked up his bag which he had with him, and stuffed all of his belongings into it. Today was easily the worst day of his entire life, even though it had only been 4.5 years for him. He could honestly say that this day, even though it had just started, was worse than all of his days of suffering he had endured in these dreaded walls before he met Hinata. He and Hinata were both leaving the orphanage, though this was not how he had planned it. If he and Hinata had been adopted together, he would have loved it. Heck, even if they had been kicked out together he would have loved it. But now he was separated from her, and he had no idea what was going to happen to him. He quickly stuffed his bag with all of his belongings, though it was pretty much already stuffed. He tucked his pillow under his arm and sat on his bed, using the last few minutes he had in the orphanage to appreciate the time he had in it with Hinata. It had only been half a year with her, but it had been the best time he could imagine. Minutes later, the man entered the room again, and grabbed Naruto hard by his arm, dragging him out of the room. In little to no time, he dragged Naruto to the glorious entrance of the orphanage, where Naruto had last seen Hinata moments ago. He walked out of the door with Naruto, and walked along the outside path until they went up to the gates of the orphanage. When they reached the gates, they were quickly opened, and Naruto was given a view of Konoha from the front of the orphanage which he had never seen before, promptly before the man grabbed him by the back of his shirt, picking him up and throwing him out of the orphanage, making him roll painfully on the dirty street ground. Good riddance, he shouted, spitting on the ground. With that, the gates of the orphanage began closing, but right before they shut, Naruto looked up in time to see a ghost, a memory of Hinata, wavering on the roof of the orphanage with him, before the gates completely shut, locking him from the outside. Thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed it. That's all for What If Naruto Had Madara Sealed Within Him Part 2. If you liked that video please hit that bell notification, like, share and subscribe to my channel and don't forget to comment down below. Until the next video take care.